Okay, this is the Capital Investment Committee meeting for April 26, 2018. Item 1 is consideration of approval of minutes from February 22nd, 2018.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Item 2, are there any items that we need to take up out of order? Are we good to go in order?
Good to go in order.
All right. Item 2, Battle Avenue project update and discussion.
So this project dates back to November of 2013 when we initiated professional services agreement to move into a design or study phase of this project. We then moved into a design, trying to find a solution for this. It took us a long time to find a solution because there's really not many great solutions to solve this problem. Ultimately, we did find a solution, which we'll present here in a second, and the board authorized us to proceed with design and right away final design and actually bid the project out. But as we continued to look at this project, we felt like it was worthy of coming back to the board for discussion just to make sure we're proceeding as you all wish. And so we have a short presentation which we're going to walk you through. If we could, Vicki, I can't zoom in with this. If you could zoom into that first exhibit, I would appreciate it, if that's possible. So I'll point on this back screen. This here topo map is what came out of the initial drainage study for the storage facility. And so these are their exact contours. And looking back on it, what's critical here, they've highlighted the basin in red. What was overlooked for whatever reason is there's a large basin to the north that also drains to this area. And right here is the low spot of where the water pond did. I'll go down to the next slide. So we took that information just to look at it and see, based on what we heard from some of the residents, had a 100-year flood event happen, what happened with a lot of that water? And this is generally where it would have stood and flooded, and we even spoke with one of the property owners there who grew up there, has lived there for many years, and said that, and he's repeatedly says, that there was not a stormwater problem there until the storage facility basically filled their site. And so this basically shows what little information we have of the existing topo, that there would not have been a problem. So if we continue, what is the solution? That's what we've been working for this whole time. What's interesting is right here, it's hard to see on this exhibit, there are two catch basins and a head wall there where the stormwater discharges. Those catch basins don't tie to any infrastructure today. So it basically dumps out onto this lot. And so we have really, I guess, two options on how to solve the flooding problem and another proposed project for your consideration, and then ultimately we're looking for guidance on how to proceed. This is the exhibit today showing where the flooding limits are. The houses in red were identified by our consultant as houses that would flood. This matches up almost identical to the May 2010 flood. These two properties here had anywhere from 1 to 3 foot of water in them. This property had water up to its foundation. This property here had water in its crawl space up to the wood framing in the floor, based on that 2010 flood event. So this is fairly accurate in our opinion, the modeling that we've done. So back to that storm pipe. Today, this here storm pipe doesn't connect to anything. It just discharges onto this property. And so what is the solution to fix that problem? Would be essentially to run an off-site storm line down Columbia over to here, and we can drain this area, which would take a small portion of that drainage basin over. It happens to be about right where the Columbia Avenue project ends. So what we would do is simply curb and gutter the frontage of this gas station, install a storm pipe as we do it. It'd be pretty disruptive because there's a lot of utilities there, but we could do that project with very little to almost no right-of-way acquisition. The estimated cost to do that's around $1.6 million. And that could be delivered pretty quick if the board wanted to move forward with it. And based on direction we received tonight, we can look to put that in a future stormwater improvement CIP. So the next issue is, how do we deal with these flooding problems up here, the residential area on Battle Avenue? So the only solution that we were able to come up with was essentially to dig a 15-foot hole in the ground in a residential area, which means we'd have to put up some type of security fencing around it, and then we'd more than likely need a landscape around it, which is what the plans call for today. And we'd have to put in a pump station, which if that pump station were to fail, the properties would still, there's no guarantee that we're not gonna run into a problem. But this is the only solution. The cost of this is around $3 million. We had initially assumed that a lot of the residents would essentially just donate easements, but as our right-of-way agent got into it, there's a lot of liens on the property, and without being able to get the banks to be able to release those liens, you're pretty much gonna have to pay a fair market value for it versus any type of a dedication to do the project, which took our project costs, our construction costs is at about 1.5 million now, which is a slight increase, but the right-of-way cost was something that we didn't, I guess, fully take into consideration as another $1.5 million. So the project has substantially increased to a cost of around $3 million is our best estimate. And right now, we feel like this is pretty accurate because we've had an appraiser go look at these properties conceptually. So since then, we were concerned if the board would even want to go forward with the project. We wanted to look to see what other solutions are out there. We did approach the two property owners that had flooding in their house and asked if they were willing to relocate should the board, no guarantee, should the board be willing to look or consider a buyout. Now, the board in the past was adamantly against it, but looking at these figures, we felt like we had to at least ask the property owners and bring it back for discussion. We have talked to both the property owners. One of them are here sitting in the audience. The other one is not, although he was invited. They both have agreed, based on the appraised value of their property, that they would be willing to take a buyout and relocate as an option should the board want to move forward with a project. I guess one of my biggest concerns when I went into this project with our team was this area has been flooding for a long time since that facility was constructed there. I would hate to see it still flooding in 15 years, 20 years. We're sitting here dealing with the same problem. So at this point, these are really the only two solutions that we could come up with, in addition to that off-site storm project, which we can include in future capital projects, to see if the board wants to proceed with that, and would like to open it up to see if you have any questions.
Go ahead.
Go on, Brett.
No, go. It's your
If you
area.
did the 15-foot hole and you pumped, where would it go?
We'd have to run an off-site force main that goes over to Columbia Avenue and ties into it, which means we're purchasing easement to run the force main up through that area.
And that's the reason for the 15-foot hole. In a normal case, a detention pond doesn't necessarily have to be that big, but in this case, we have to hold the entire 100-year storm so that we can then pump it out. So that's why it has to be so big.
Any easy, slow runoff.
No.
No, the big
No, it would be-
concern that we have anytime you design a pond is you always have to worry about kids or children trying to get into them or playing in them, and a storm event comes along and water fills up quickly. It's what it's designed to do, and that's 15-foot holes like that are not an ideal
Yeah.
solution with vertical walls, but that is the design that's worked. That's the design we presented in the back in the day, and we can absolutely still proceed with it if the funding is not an issue to you.
What's the, both homeowners have agreed to a buyout? Is that, no?
They have agreed. They said they would be willing to do a buyout based on the appraisal we provided them.
Okay. And if we did that, would we clear the lots? And
So if we were to buy out, the solution that we would propose, and this is the cost, is around $2 million. What we would do is tear the houses down, the two that had standing water in them. My immediate concern was, well, I don't want the city then to be left with a nuisance problem and be getting calls because of water standing on the lots. What we could do, included in this price, is put a few underground detention pipes where your nuisance storms, your 10-year event type storm, would stay underground and do exactly what it's doing today. It infiltrates over a week or 2 weeks.
so we create some capacity where we wouldn't have a pond.
It
Correct.
wouldn't be standing water for days and days. Now, your bigger events, there will be standing water, and we talked a little bit with Joe and his team. We'd set it up so that it could be pumped down on occasion if it did have a big, another 100-year event. You would absolutely have water, but
We're
that would
bringing a
all,
temporary pump.
you bring in a temporary
correct.
pump and take care of it. And I think they've responded maybe 3 times over the last, I don't know, 10 years is what my understanding of it is. And that's in its condition today, and it's actually worse
So
today.
what, is this in addition to or in lieu of the Columbia Avenue?
They're they're kind of the same problem because they pond in the same area, but they're two separate projects, separate costs.
So
Separate issues.
doing the $2 million purchase and everything else doesn't mean we don't have to do the Columbia Avenue.
No, we need to do the Columbia Avenue eventually. Right now, I mean, just two catch basins that drain nowhere is not, you would never build infrastructure like that. I can't understand how it got built that way, honestly. It just happened so long ago.
Well, under the circumstances as they then existed, maybe it wasn't an issue.
True, very true.
When did the storage units go in?
94, and it very
Okay.
well could be that they discharged it to that low sump that was there, and that was acceptable at the
That
time
would
it
have
was
been my
done.
guess. They were going to the low
And
point.
that's an assumption, that's all it is. I really don't know the history.
So are you recommending this purchase and,
That would be my recommendation, yes, but ultimately, we're looking for.
so it's $1
given the
million?
cost.
Did you say it's $3 million to do the pit, to do the,
Yeah. It's
and leave the homeowners in place?
It's $1 million more to leave them in place and.
But create a giant hole,
And
Yes.
create a giant hole.
which aside from the aesthetics is potentially dangerous.
Yes.
And where's the hole located? It's kind of,
Can you show it? in
is
the
it by
back?
the storage unit?
So the big hole,
Yeah.
basically, this is surrounded by retaining walls with a pump station.
Oh, boy.
I mean, 100% retaining walls. And we've done some geotechnical work, so we're anticipating solid rock to excavate it.
We would actually have to purchase the property just north of the existing detention pond and widen that detention pond
And that's
into that.
another expense?
Is that
That's
in your
correct.
1.4 million?
That is in the $1.4 million.
Yes.
And you'd have to blast to get, if it's all rock, you'd have to blast, wouldn't you?
It's either that or hoe ram it the whole time, which is very
And that
disruptive.
would be
but,
lovely for the neighbors.
yeah.
And that cost isn't in there, you said, Jonathan, right?
is.
It is in there. The
To
cost for the property is in there for
buy the.
Project 2A.
To buy that other property?
Yes, it's in there.
Oh, so, okay, I'm sorry. Are you still asking?
I'm third.
All right, so, let me go back through this again. So, mitigating the problem, keeping the people in place, and doing all that, and your 15-foot ditch, whatever you call it, is 3 million, whatever, okay? So the 2 million, the second option, okay, run that by me again. That
Would-
includes the buyout
Yes.
of the homes?
That is the bulk of the right-of-way involved there is the $1.2 million for both properties.
Okay, for both properties. And then what is the construction here that you're talking
We
about
would
again?
simply
Does that
tear the
include
houses down, regrade the lots, and in the process of
Okay.
regrading the lots, because we would create a sump, we would put
Sump,
in
okay,
a catch
like a sump
basin
pump.
in an underground
Because that's the construction you're talking
storm
about, okay.
pipes, yes.
And then, okay. And then what happens over there near that building on the corner where it used to, where you said you'd have to create that,
Here?
yeah, that nothing happens
It just
there.
remained part of a buildable
Yeah.
lot that somebody could
Do something.
do
with.
something with maybe long-term.
And what happens to those empty lots? We just leave them, or, how many acres together would those two lots
Ooh, I
be?
don't know
Would
that
it be an
answer.
acre, a half an acre, or?
Probably about an acre total, a little over an acre
Uh-huh,
maybe.
uh-huh. Could they do something like they did on Old Liberty Pike over there and put a little pocket park for neighborhood?
We would try to maintain it in that manner. I don't know that we would put improvements on it, but we would
Well-
create a small sump
Mhm.
just because it floods, but we could certainly look to do
Well,
something like that.
Lisa, you remember the little park that Franklin, Leadership Franklin people, I think, did on Old Liberty Pike there? That little area? They took that lot, we had to buy that lot and tear that house down because of the flood, the 2010 flood, and it looks great. Every time I drive by there, I go, now that's an improvement, rather than just an empty lot sitting there. So if we did that, I would want to do something very similar here for the neighborhood. I think, because if everybody drives over there in Old Liberty Pike and looks at that, you know, if you're gonna have two lots, have about an acre, you should do something with it and make it aesthetically nice, and maybe Leadership Franklin, another group could take that on. Okay, so, all right. Yeah, I'd lean to this option, absolutely. I don't want the liability either of a 15-foot hole.
When we have these floods, I'm trying to remember how long it takes that water to either soak into the ground or evaporate. what is, about a week?
It's a week to 2 weeks according to one of the property owners out there, Buddy Mills, I believe. Ben, is that your, yeah, a week to 2 weeks is what it takes today. And again, we would try to store that underground, so it's not,
But there'd be more
A nuisance.
space for it to
there'd be more
be
space.
absorbed into the
Yeah.
Maybe
soil.
a sump, yeah, like a, what is
What
this?
would that do, if we did this option, what would that do to mitigate the two other houses that were impacted by the flood?
We've preliminarily looked at it. We can put the 100-year here without a pump station.
So we would buy two but save four, or prevent flooding of four.
Yes.
Good.
It would take some minor regrading, but you can get the 100-year on those two properties without if you were to take them.
Mhm. I think it's a no-brainer. I definitely think this is the way to go.
Well, I mean, I think our options are do nothing,
Right.
which is not a great option, or this. But a $3 million pit sounds like a bad plan all the way around.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly.
The other thing I would say is that we have a number of other houses that have much higher floods in the 100-year floodplain. I mean, whenever you're talking about it, this being up here, not down, covering in the basement, and they're not getting any help.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, where,
My thought on that is, a lot of those houses that are along the river, there's nothing we can do to stop the Harpeth River.
Yeah.
We studied it with the Corps over and over and over again. They had one solution, which is a great solution to take 30 houses, but 30 homes out of the floodplain, but they studied every solution possible.
but that's jacking them up, right? That's,
You can either remove them, obviously, or yeah, you can jack them up some as much as almost 11 feet. So basically, the houses you see on Liberty Pike, or Old Liberty Pike now, that are really high off the ground, that's what the Corps is proposing for those houses.
Yep.
So there is that solution for those
or
houses.
a couple on Lancaster.
Yes.
They came back in and rebuilt those homes and tore those down and rebuilt them up pretty high. Some of them are okay,
So,
but
although there are other homes that are impacted by flooding, worse, it may be that no $2 million project would solve that.
No, except for raising them, I guess.
Raising
I
them.
didn't think of that. Jonathan's right. You could certainly look at raising structures.
But doing this doesn't mean we couldn't do
that's
that.
not our
Well, not
responsibility.
these, because these have already, look at the backs of them.
Yeah, not these
They're
ones.
already
But-
raised.
Yeah,
Isn't it
not
our
these ones.
responsibility to raise people's houses?
Well, that's why I said one option here is nothing, but
Yeah.
that's,
It's not our responsibility to raise
The other
people's
big
houses.
difference to this is just the way this has happened over the years is a little different than those along the Harpeth River.
yeah. Okay, so is
Can
there
actually do something.
is there,
What do you want
I'll make,
today?
I'll make a motion, well,
Right now, we're just looking for
yeah.
feedback and looking for direction.
I'd make a motion to, what is it, 2B, Project 2B, to move forward with whatever you need to do to bring it to, what, the next work session? Or would you bring it back here again?
We could bring it to the next work session with Eric's approval, and
Yeah.
we would look to get your direction, and if the option is 2B, we would then go negotiate
Alright.
contracts with the landowners.
Well, my motion is to take this to the full work session with the option of 2B recommended to the board.
that's a proper motion.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Interesting.
Item 3, consideration of a professional services agreement with Alfred Benish and Company for the design of intersection improvements at the McEwen Drive interchange with I-65 in an amount not to exceed $28,365.60.
So this is a professional services agreement. We get a lot of complaints from the new tenants at Franklin Parks of traffic backing up to the signal, and we've been evaluating to figure out options, and our traffic engineer, Carl Boffman, came up with a good idea. There's two left turn or southbound turn lanes on the interchange that goes southbound on I-65. Right now, we're utilizing one of them. To solve the problem, we could easily open up that other leftbound turn lane. Looking at it on the surface, we thought we could just proceed with this and work with our street department and have our annual contractor do it. However, when we looked into the design, it's all super elevated, And we got a little bit hesitant to start changing super elevations where you turn the roadway to help trucks from overturning or based on the design speed. And so we really need to go out there and do a survey and actually put together a design so that we don't compromise that safety and keep the super elevation, but this will help us to improve traffic on the McEwen interchange substantially, and is basically being driven by a lot of complaints that we've
Yeah.
received, so.
Well,
Go ahead.
thank you for bringing this so quickly, because we just talked about this recently, and it's just only going to get worse. Pat Emery's development there has the 2 office buildings now, a 3rd being developed soon, with another one coming after that. The Franklin Park apartments over there being opened later this year. So we've got to move the traffic out. So when they come out of Franklin Park, with the 2 glass office buildings that are there now, you know, where I'm talking about, when you come out to McEwen and you want to take a right and go down and get on the interstate, if you want to go south on the interstate, just to get out, you've got 1 lane all blocked up, everybody trying to get in that lane to go south. And this will allow us to 2 lanes. So when you pull out onto McEwen and take a right, which would be headed west, then you're going to have 2 separate lanes, and then you can get in those 2 separate left lanes to take a left onto southbound I-65.
The entrance ramp.
And the entrance ramp. So, and there's room there, and we really, really need this.
Anything else we need to do on the entrance ramp?
Pretty
Is there
neat.
enough capacity there?
There's enough capacity that we believe,
Yep.
there's a slight chance that TDOT may want us to do some additional work, but we're gonna try to start with the lowest
Okay.
cost possible.
Yeah.
Is it just restriping?
Unfortunately, no. So the modifications on McEwen Drive itself are just restriping and some minor signal modifications, but it's when you turn onto the concrete ramp headed southbound. The way that's set up now is there's a right turn lane that's continuous off McEwen, and there's a single left turn lane that comes through, and those 2 lanes merge further down on the ramp. What we would propose to do is make the right turn lane a yield condition, because it has a lot of storage in it, and then both lanes coming down would be the 2 left turn lanes. But the way they cross over now, they would actually hit a bump, and it would cause a vehicle to kind of tilt and swerve to the other side.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure we get that right.
Yeah.
Is there a
Good.
motion?
I'll make a motion to move this to full board.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Item 4, discussion regarding the phasing of the approved Franklin Special School District Concept Master Plans.
Thank you. So in the fall of last year, the Board of Mayor and Aldermen approved the joint effort between the Franklin Special School District and the Franklin Parks Department. And the first, yes, thank you, Vicki. What's on the screen today, in meeting with Dr. Snowden and him receiving feedback from his board, is to take a look at what's the first project that we ought to work on together jointly. We considered, as we were going through this process, is what would benefit us the most on both sides, is at least being the first project. And what's before you tonight is, just from a discussion standpoint, is basically the Freedom Middle and Popular Grove. With Jim Warren, we currently host the baseball programs. They have softball, but having a large field, which is over 300 foot, which allows for middle school and even for open league, meaning older kids to play, that is real important. Plus, lighting and that type is much of a benefit when you're looking at tournament. So this is the area in which we have jointly discussed, and looking at the back wall is you have the baseball field here where it currently stands on the property. If we can go up just a little bit, Vicki, thank you. And then you also have a batting cage that's proposed in the middle. You have softball as well as a concession stand, and which has restrooms for this area. For us, this is very important. From the school system standpoint, I think it's important to share with board members that they have to consider Title IX. We don't so much, because we have baseball and county does softball, but we do have to consider that in the school system, that you have something for boys and girls. and jointly. But by having this, we do, however, host softball tournaments for females at Fieldstone, where we'll actually bring in temporary fencing, and we could use this as a site. So we could utilize both areas. It does have a batting cage, which is very important. Two things that probably in this area, two things that we see at Jim Warren that get used the most, especially on days like today when you can't play on the fields, batting cages. They're able to utilize for their teams, but also practices, and also for their physical education classes. So it's still important that the school system receive that. So I just want to bring before you is that to share with you what the kind of the timeline that we see bringing forth to the board and to the Franklin Special School District Board, at least a game plan. And so the first will be a memorandum of understanding. We have drafted one that we'll be proposing through our process as well as through the Franklin Special School District to understand not only usage of a joint use and agreement, but also cost. And that's real important to identify, because from this point forward, there'll be a joint cost, a sharing in any of the costs that we do, including hiring consultants. The next would be is to complete a master plan, which it would include some environmental, stormwater. Because we're so close to the neighborhoods, there is a swell in this area. And bring back professional service agreement to where we would work with engineering to do that master plan. Franklin Special School District would approve it. The Board of Mayor and Aldermen approve it, and it would be jointly paid together. And in that master plan, they would bring forth an opinion of cost. And that way we understand what this particular first phase of projects would be, and then decide on what should be constructed first. But we do believe that this would be the first phase of projects in this endeavor. So I just wanted to bring that before you. I'm not asking anything of you this evening, but just to get it back in front of you for any discussion or comments that you may have.
Who would manage the facilities? Would it be the Parks Department or the Special School District?
I think you'll have a little bit of shared use, and that would be part of the memorandum of understanding. As far as the fields themselves, we would like to step up and be part of that. They currently do not have that with their staff, but they may take care of the facilities such as the restroom and the concessions. We're not looking to take over concessions.
Mm-hmm.
We see that a PTA would run those things, but they are needed for both entities.
But scheduling and that kind of thing.
We would most likely share some type of shared calendar. We would work that out between the two of us. The school would receive top priority while the school was in session. On weekends, in summer, then that's where we would come into play. So I think this is not a new concept. Many school districts have this. It's new to us. And so we would need to work out those details. But I do feel like we need to do that all digitally with today's.
I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I really do.
Any other questions you may have? Well, anyway, thank you for allowing me to bring this forth. And Mr. Stickey, do you have any
I would
comment?
we've got some other work to do. I think our initial piece would be to do, I think we've estimated around $60,000 worth of planning work that we would share equally with the school district on this particular project. We need to draw up some agreements that govern how we work together, and things like the logistics and scheduling that you just talked about, and maintenance components that will also be a part of this. But we'd like to start the planning work, and that's, I think, the piece we would bring to the board next.
Yeah, so we would, hopefully, from the consultant standpoint and with FSD's approval, we'd like to have that before the end of this fiscal year.
Item 5, consideration of draft amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with CDM Smith, Inc. for the Robinson Lake Dam supplemental geotechnical investigation in an amount not to exceed $188,700.
I think we'd like to hold this item, right?
Item 6, consideration of a draft professional services agreement with Collier Engineering Company, Inc. for engineering services for the reconstruction of tennis courts at Jim Warren Park in an amount not to exceed $74,575.
With this project, we've been working with the Parks Department, and the Jim Warren tennis courts are, especially 4 of the courts are in very poor shape, and actually, I believe they've closed those 4 of the courts because the surface is so rough and they're worried about trip hazards. The Parks asked us to come out there and have a look at them, and we asked our street department to go out there and take some core samples of the pavement beneath the surface, and it's in really poor condition. So what we're showing here is for a designer to come in and show a total redesign of that site, new pavement, new surfaces, and bring that up to standards.
And this item had come up in our budget discussions, budget review with Lisa and her team, and we had talked about wanting to try to see what we could get done even yet this fiscal year. It looks like what we'll be able to get done is starting with the engineering work that needs to happen, and then hopefully pull the trigger on the work to replace the court and do the courts and do what needs to be done the very first part of the fiscal year next year in July. So realistically, that's what we think we can get done. We'd hope to get it done a little faster, but the nature of the design and planning work that needs to happen ahead of time is just going to chew up a little more time than we had hoped.
Okay. Item 7, do you need
We need
action
to-
on that?
I think
Yes,
we do, yes.
need
We
a
want to
recommendation.
vote on that.
I'll make motion to move forward on this.
To the
As is.
board?
To board, full board.
Numbers, you number
Number
6,
six.
you mean?
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah,
number 6.
second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Number 7, consideration of a draft resolution, a resolution authorizing condemnation for the acquisition of property for the Henpeck Line Sanitary Sewer Project.
We've been setting out offer letters at this point, and we're just putting this in place should negotiations fail. As always, we'll make 2-3 offers, meet with the property owners as many times as possible, and try to settle it, but should negotiations fail, this allows us to go to condemnation.
How's it going? Have you started it?
We've started, and actually the residents seem to they've come around to it. At first, there was a big uprise where they weren't happy with the sewer going in, and since the public meeting, they've all opened up and understand the improvement will benefit them and it'll benefit the school district, but there's usually 1 or 2 that don't settle in any type of large right-of-way acquisition
And in some
process.
cases, we'll need it for lien holders and things that we can't settle with.
That's
So
true.
in many cases, well, not in many cases, but in some cases, the property owner physically can't settle because they may have a lien on their property. And we need to go the condemnation
Yeah,
route for
that
that.
happens very frequently.
You need an action, you need
Yes,
an
we do.
authorization.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
11, consideration of draft amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with Gresham Smith and Partners for the construction, administration, engineering, and inspection services for the Hillsborough Road improvements, Phase 2, Independence Square to Macatcher Parkway, in an amount not to exceed $84,000.
We skipped 8 through 10, but we can hit 11
Oh, did I?
if you'd
Oh, I
like.
rolled my thing there. Okay, 8.
Yeah.
I'm just excited.
I thought there was something I didn't know
I
about.
looked-
No.
He said 8. Didn't he say 8?
He said it 11.
It's good to be the
11.
All
chair.
right, just gonna edit that part out.
We'll fix that in production.
Yeah,
He
post-production.
says he's quick, that's why.
Item 8, consideration of draft resolution 2018-30, a resolution authorizing condemnation for the acquisition of property for the Lewisburg Pike Turn Lane Improvements Project.
Yeah,
I
We
think
have,
my electrical circuits might have got short-circuited the other night.
Yeah.
we have a few of these resolutions on tonight, but again, this relates to improvements we need to make to Lewisburg Pike. This is at the Bushnell property, also provides a secondary access to Stream Valley. The developer is responsible for doing the work. And this is all part of the comprehensive transportation network plan as widening, and should negotiations fail, this allows us to proceed with the necessary improvements that we need.
I have a question about this. Do we need to have a motion first or something?
Well, let's get a motion and then we can have conversation.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay?
All right, on the picture, this,
Yes.
where's the road?
Should be right there in the middle.
You mean in the water?
Their road, it's gonna go around, you're talking about the lake, it's gonna go around the lake. They have a design.
This allows for us to put a road in.
And where's it gonna go is what you're asking.
Yeah, I don't have those site plans, I know they've been worked out. It goes around the lake is my understanding. Jimmy, why don't you step up here and
think
Give
it
a
kind of
quick
goes along that
explanation.
line on one, but I'm not sure.
I think it's right on that line.
Yeah, I think so.
It is. It goes on the northern property line of, north of the pond there, and it's, they got an ARAP through the state of Tennessee to permit moving that bank a little closer to the, further to the south, and that allows them to get the access road in.
All right, but they're gonna build the road.
Correct. They build the access road off of Lewisburg. This is for the improvements, the turn lanes that are needed, based on the traffic study that was performed.
So our part is what?
It's all,
As any project where we do a partnership with a developer to make improvements, if acquisition fails, we typically go out and attempt to acquire, and if that fails, then we go to last resort of condemnation with board approval.
Okay, thank you.
Are we ready to vote?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
9, consideration of draft resolution 2018-31, a resolution authorizing condemnation for the acquisition of property for the Franklin Road Improvements Project.
We're getting ready to start the acquisition process for Franklin Road, and if negotiations fail, this allows us to move the project forward.
Move approval.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 10, consideration of draft resolution 2018-32, a resolution authorizing condemnation for the acquisition of property for intersection improvements project at East McEwen Drive and Cool Springs Boulevard / Oxford Glen Drive.
This is the McEwen Roundabout bypass lanes, and this, we're working on appraisals now. Should we fail, we'll move into condemnation. But we're pushing this to get it out to bid as soon as we can, and we need to acquire the right-of-way first.
Will this add another lane?
Good.
It will add right turn bypass lanes on 2 quadrants of the roundabout. It won't add any through lanes on McEwen Drive, just right turn bypass lanes. And it will make some modifications at the roundabout to help reduce speed at the roundabout.
When you're coming up on the roundabout, if you're coming from the interstate and headed east, and past Carruthers, and you go on down and you get to the roundabout, as you're coming in, there'll be a right-hand turn lane that goes up the hill to the McKay's Mill area. And then if you're coming west on McEwen from Wilson Pike, as you come down to the roundabout, to take a right-hand turn on Cool Springs, that would take you down to the Marriott, to the I-65, that will be a right-hand dedicated turn as well, so
Okay.
we can move traffic.
So move.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
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 11, at long last. Consideration of draft amendment number 1 to the professional services agreement with Gresham Smith and Partners for the construction, administration, engineering, and inspection services for the Hillsborough Road Improvements Phase 2, Independence Square to Macatcher Parkway in an amount not to exceed $84,000.
We as staff are extremely disappointed that Hillsborough Road is not completed. The project should have been done in November, and probably sooner than that. And because of the time delays that we're experiencing, we have to pay our construction, administration, engineering, inspection services additional money to be out there, which we need them out there, and it's also required by the federal regulations to have them out there.
Okay, I have a question. Is that not the responsibility of the contractor?
That will probably come up through the liquidated damages and how we decide to proceed with that. The liquidated damages have been set up to try to cover that type of cost, and that would be our mechanism to try to recover, as far as I'm aware.
But this entity works for us, and you want them to work for you
Yes.
as part of implementing the project, but that's precisely the costs associated with a project extending beyond the deadline is incurring these kind of costs, and we will be pursuing that.
And to their credit in this particular case, the consultant that's doing the inspection for us has not asked for an amendment. They've been able to squeeze their budget and carry on, because their contract was to go through the original 14 or 15 months. They've been able to keep going up through February of this year on the original contract without any additional funds.
So this is the,
When are they gonna be done?
Yeah.
Right now, we'll go ahead and do the capital improvement project update for Hillsborough Road right now. The tentative schedule for final paving is May 14th or 15th is when they're expected to get out there. We're having some problems getting some mixed designs done that are required before we can actually put pavement down. Once they get that down, they'll do final striping and we'll do a punch list. So we're expecting paving to be done in mid-May, approximately about a week to pave all of that. and then they'll do final punch list items after that. So at this point, we're looking at June.
We do plan to pave through the Mac Hatcher Hillsborough intersection.
And
Which
all
is
the way down to
technically-
Wendy's.
Yeah, which is technically not part of the
All the way.
project, but we're gonna pave through the,
Correct.
up to,
It goes through the intersection itself.
yeah, I don't know if there's a benchmark.
There's
in
really
terms of
not.
place
There's not
to
a
look
good
at.
one.
Through the intersection.
And south as far as Wendy's?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll tie into the pavement from phase one.
Okay. All right. We need a action on that one.
Move for approval.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 12, consideration of draft resolution 2018-33, a resolution authorizing condemnation for the acquisition of property on the State Route 96 West Trail Project, Vera Valley Road to Fifth Avenue North.
This is the same thing. We're working on appraisals as we speak, and should negotiations fail, this allows us to proceed with
All right.
condemnation.
I move for approval.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
13, amendment number 2 to the professional services agreement with Smith Seckman Reed for the Mac Hatcher Parkway Water and Sanitary Sewer Relocation Project in the amount of $7,850.
This is, Smith Seckman Reed did the original relocation plans and all of our paperwork for the Mac Hatcher project. With that project, we are entitled to be reimbursed where our utilities are in private easements. We discovered one sewer line that was overlooked that needs to be relocated due to some changes that were made with the Mac Hatcher plans, with changing roundabouts and changing other things. And so this amendment will allow them to do the additional design work so that we can finalize the easement acquisition associated with utility relocations in Mac Hatcher.
All right. Move for approval.
I'll recuse myself.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 14, amendment number 4 to the professional services agreement with Heathcote and Davis for Goose Creek Sanitary Sewer Extension Project from west of I-65 to east of I-65 in the amount of $5,500.
So this is for the completion of that contract has taken a little bit longer, partially due to the weather. The bore underneath 65 took a little bit longer than anticipated. This is Heathcote and Davis is our design engineer that, so this is accounting for that additional time to perform inspection services and construction management services.
I move for approval.
I recuse myself from this.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Number 15, change order number 3 to the construction contract with Judy Construction Company for the water treatment plant modifications project for a total time extension of 78 calendar days.
So this one is, there's no money, there's no change order request. It's just, this is just for time. So there's been some significant items that have been added to the project, all within our contingency monies, but that's kind of extended sometimes as we've delved further into rehabbing that plant. We've come up with a lot of things that since we're in there, we might as well replace some type of thing. So this is accounting for that time. This is putting the substantial completion on May 9th, and then final completion on the end of June, beginning of July.
I move for approval.
Recuse.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. 16, capital project status report.
Okay, we already touched on Hillsborough Road, and then the next one I'd like to touch on is Hunter's Bend. So the major infrastructure, the tunnel improvements, the major infrastructure of the walls, lighting, tunnel repairs are complete now. The one thing we're waiting on now is for weather to lift a little bit where they can finalize the grading out there and actually get everything back open. They're expecting to do that within, their hope is if the weather holds out next week, they'll be out there and be able to complete final grading. So they have final grading, the anti-graffiti coating on the wall, and the installation of the handrail. That's what's left.
So when do you think that opens up for the public?
Should be opening up mid-May is what we're shooting for at this point, assuming weather holds out.
Okay. I was out there the other day with a shovel. You could open that tunnel. I don't understand.
You could open up.
I mean, I was out there Monday, was it? And there's dirt over a sidewalk because apparently they were running a Bobcat or whatever that thing is.
Correct.
Oh, back and forth over the sidewalk. there's a Middle Tennessee Electric box with a hole, is sitting in a hole. If you filled that in and got the dirt off the sidewalk,
The problem in that area is we're gonna still have equipment moving to do final grading. A lot of the earth is there, but they're still gonna have equipment all over the site moving around, and it's really not safe to have people working in that area. And they're also gonna be back on top of the wall area, so that the matting you see out there is just temporary to keep the weather from washing everything in. They're actually in talks with the subcontractor or sub-supplier to get that permanent matting, so there's still gonna be a lot of work in the area, and we don't want people in the area while they're still trying to work. What they're gonna do is as they get done down at the bottom, we're gonna go ahead and open up that tunnel and allow people to go ahead and at least cross through and cross both tunnels, but they'll keep that upper area closed until we're done with spraying and final earthwork.
So basically, Jonathan's meeting with them every week, and as soon as we can get the sections open, we're gonna open them up in sections, but the entirety of it may be mid-May, we just need to keep.
Correct.
He's meeting with them every week. to try to do
I don't
it.
understand why they're not down there when they could be, when they're not working. I mean, they're months and months and months and months and months behind, and I walked down there Monday in penny loafers, and there was no one there at, I don't know, 1:30? It wasn't raining. I didn't have an umbrella. It was not there. I don't get it.
I was out there as well on Monday afternoon, and the reason for not working was the rains on the weekend for earthwork. They'll make a bigger mess than what they can actually get accomplished out there. The weather's been, the last week, I won't say the whole project, because obviously that's not the case, but the last week or so, weather is what's been holding them back from finishing the earthwork.
They can't put handrails in? I mean, it's impossible for me to explain to people why that tunnel is going to be closed for a year, when anecdotally, you go down there on any given day, and they're not there at all. Or they knock off at 2:30 on a day that they, I mean, I can't even,
Yeah, we can't.
I don't even have, there's nothing left for me to say. Like, I've been given at least a half a dozen or 10 or 12 different deadlines for completion, none of which have happened. And then I go down there just, on the way home, and they're not there. They're not doing anything.
Yeah, we're equally frustrated with it. I know Jonathan meets with them every week, if not going out there more to look at the site, and we're somewhat at their mercy trying to get it done, and they know that we're intending to charge liquidated damages on the job, and that's just, that's all we have at this point, but we're meeting with them
How much are
every
the
week.
liquidated damages?
I don't know that I have that number. You got it?
I believe they're $1,000 a day. I don't know that for sure without going back and looking at the contract.
I mean, I'm telling you, I'm willing to have a lengthy meeting to go over what they claim they've done and when. I've been down there a lot, and you could probably reconstruct this project from the pictures I've taken. So I am absolutely willing to convene a public meeting and ask everyone involved in this project, city staff and contractors, to explain this to me.
Yeah,
Because I cannot, I don't remember a project that has been as unreasonably and unnecessarily delayed as this, given what the complexity of the project. I mean, it's one thing to have a 3-mile road project like Hillsborough Road run over some amount of time with multiple utilities and everything else. But this tunnel got designed, nearly completed, and then completely deconstructed, basically started over with a design that should have been made in the first place. And even then, that redesign was last summer. So I hope everybody's ready to answer my questions, because I'm not happy with anyone about this. Anyone. This to me suggests a much more fundamental problem in how we administer projects. If we can't make people do what we want them to do, then you guys need to tell me, what kind of hammers do you need to make people do this? They just show up and work 3 hours and knock off.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, your choices are you can fire the contractor or you can charge force liquidated damages. Those are your two choices.
Well, but, I mean,
Contractor's very well aware that we're gonna charge him. We've gone as far as even making him watch these videos so that he could see how angry people are. They don't have an excuse.
Ridiculous.
They don't have an excuse to give us
Never
yet.
use these people.
If they had a good excuse, we'd be presenting it and
But
defending them.
they haven't given any excuse.
they just, well, when you work, you know, a third of a day, if at all, this is what you get. So, you know, I don't know what their profit margin was going to be and whether they just did the math and said, okay, $1,000 a day, you know, whatever. But it's almost like they've been hired for two different projects and they shouldn't have gotten either. And you know, I'm gonna ask legal, how do we make sure these people never get another bid? Ever, anywhere? I don't want them replacing 4 square feet of sidewalk. If this is how they do a project that impacts a neighborhood like this. And they have there is no safe way to get from the east side of Fieldstone Farms to the west side or vice versa. There is no crosswalk across Hillsborough Road. And that tunnel's been closed for 12 months. You got kids and people taking risks, running across Hillsborough Road without the benefit of a cross signal or a crosswalk or anything else. And I'm down there the other day at 1:30 in the afternoon, and it's barricaded up, and there's not a soul to be seen but me. No rain, and I get, okay, fine, earthwork, whatever. I don't care. Be out there leaning on a shovel. Make some demonstration of effort. I'm so done with this. I'm serious. I'm gonna ask staff what my subpoena powers are. Because I'm ready to bring people in here and put them on camera and ask them these questions. Why did you do this? When did you do this? I'm about to spend hours of my own time poring over daily log books to get to the bottom of this, because I want to know who's to blame. And I'm not willing to just say, oh, well, it's some guy I'll never meet. Not anymore. Not anymore. I've had at least 10 different deadlines come and go. And I'm tired of trying to answer questions that I don't have answers to. People ask me, when's the deadline? When's it going to be reopen? And even now, I'm being told maybe May. Maybe in another 3 weeks. And I don't see 3 weeks worth of work down there, but I'm not, you know, I don't do this for a living. But I just don't, there's 3 small pieces of equipment out there and a porta potty, and no one working. So just everybody batten down the hatches, because I'm coming.
We understand, and we understand the frustration, and it's an embarrassment that it's taken this long to get this done.
You should live there and represent the neighborhood.
I understand. One of the things I'm asking staff to look in, not just about this project, but we've seen this in other projects as well, where we have delays and we have these frustrations, and there really aren't good reason, except for some of the attention that happens from contractors, and the quality of work is sometimes not there. Looking at what kind of leverage we can strengthen in our contracting, both in terms of the liquidated damage piece and the punitive piece, but also are there things that we can do to better incentivize early completion or accelerated completion. So one of the things we're looking at across the board is how we contract and what leverage we provide for ourselves to address these kind of situations meaningfully. Because sometimes they do the math and that liquidated damages piece is just not incentive enough to get their attention. And we've got to look at ways to get their attention better. So I hear you, I understand and share the same frustration, and we're looking at other global issues that this is an example of that we want to have more leverage in our contracts related to these kind of projects.
Okay.
Next, McEwen Phase 4. We are preparing to submit the final document. We heard back from the last technical study, so our consulting is preparing the final document to submit to TDOT for approval. We've already done RFQs to get appraisers and review appraisers on board, so we hope to be starting that very, very soon.
You're gonna go out for right away by when? June?
We know we'll go out for right-of-way this summer. What we want to do is submit the first round to TDOT and make sure they don't have any substantial comments or any kind of changes. We don't want to require right-of-way that's then wasted. So
Yeah,
we do want to get
I
that first submittal.
I don't want to be sitting around here waiting to go to right away by August or September.
Yeah.
I mean, we can't waste the whole summer here. So,
As soon as we can get appraisers working on appraisals, and the utilities, like we talked about on Tuesday, is the big thing. I gotta get the utilities figured out
right.
so that we're ready to
Utilities
appraise.
is the main thing where we know.
As soon as we get that done,
All
we'll be
right,
at a
just
position
keep
to
us posted.
move it.
Okay, thanks.
Do we know when we think environmental clearance
Uh,
comes?
If they submit, when they're submit within the next week or so, it should take about 30 to 60 days to hear the final response. So once they give us that final response, then they'll give us the notice to proceed for the next phase, and we can
Okay.
move forward.
And right now, the utilities really seem to be that critical path of,
Yeah.
to get this
So we're
project
starting the utility
as aggressive
design
as we can,
piece
yes.
now.
It's already started.
I'm going to make one request. I'd like for someone to email me the contract on that tunnel. I want to read it.
I can.
Mhm.
I'll do it just right after this meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other
Um,
updates that we need?
I want to look at Mallory and Liberty Pike.
Okay, if that's,
Yes, Mallory and Liberty Pike, we have the draft right-of-way plans in hand. We actually had a meeting, was it late last week, Paul? To talk about how we could possibly reduce some of the right-of-way needs in that area, because it gets very tight. Because what we're proposing is a full build-out of that intersection, dual through lanes in every direction, dual left turn lanes, and dedicated right turn lanes. But as you can imagine, at that particular intersection, it gets very tight to the apartments. And what we've discovered lately is the right-of-way costs are extremely high. Obviously, that's good for a booming economy, but not good for purchasing right-of-way for a project. So we're trying to look at ways we can potentially reduce some of that right-of-way need. That's what we're working on right now.
So when you are going west on Liberty, there's going to be a dedicated, two dedicated right-hand turn lanes going on to North Mallory?
There'll be one dedicated right turn lane.
Oh,
Yeah, typically you do one dedicated right turn lane. The double lefts are usually the big one that you need, because the right turns can go on multiple phases of the signal. And right now, we're
Okay.
gonna, like Jonathan said, we're gonna take one step back to look at, the plans are basically done, other than we wanna take one step back to make sure we're not overbuilding the intersection.
okay. I was just going to say, there's room at that corner
Mhm.
to do double right-hand turn lanes on North Mallory. We'd have the right, we'd have the land to do it. There's nothing happening at that corner.
Yeah, there's definitely the land. Our traffic analysis, which includes a lot of the development that's come through, doesn't show the need for it. But we're gonna take one step back
Oh,
and look at
yeah.
that really critically.
Well,
move it.
they need, guys, they need to look at that place down at, they need to look at, you know, where Lifetime Athletics is, right across the street, 2 more restaurants, or 3 restaurants are going in, a bank. Then on the other opposite corner, South Star has a development they're gonna be doing, and then all up and down Carruthers. All that traffic comes down and either goes down Carruthers or goes on Liberty. So, and with the school there and everything, I think we need to look at, because when I come down there on Liberty at 4 o'clock, 4:30, 5:30, it's just packed. Because people are coming down Carruthers and turning. And you literally, you know where the overpass for 65 is? The traffic's backed up before that just to get down to Mallory. And when the light is red, we're backed way up past 65, and you're waiting and waiting, and if people were turning right and you could get down there and move the traffic to the north of Mallory. So I really think they need to look at,
We'll look at that too.
Two
We'll add that into
lanes.
the mix.
okay.
Really, I'll take any other questions you have on project status.
We're gonna move ahead with Jordan Branch very soon.
Correct.
The residents want to get started ASAP.
And they actually completed the archaeological studies
Yep,
already. They
right.
actually got that done ahead of schedule.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get that started here real soon this summer.
Yes.
Because the residents, I went and spoke at their HOA meeting the other night, and they want us to move on it as soon as we can get the bulldozers in the ground over there. Okay? And then Ralston Creek is, what are we gonna do there? What's the next move? What do we need to do next?
We're still talking about that project internally,
that's in
about how
Royal
to
Oaks.
proceed with it, and still trying to fine tune the flood study. So as soon as we get that fine tuned, we'll bring it back forward to a public meeting.
And we need to meet with them again.
We do, and we've started on
So-
the design where the stream is really eating into these people's yards
Yeah.
significantly.
I know.
We've started on that design, anticipating, we know exactly what needs to be done. That way, once we have the public meeting, hopefully we can fold that
Okay.
into the public meeting as well.
Jonathan, you still have their email addresses, correct?
I should,
Most of
yes.
those? Could you send an email out to them and copy me on it and just give them a little update?
Sure.
Because I'm sure some of them are gonna start saying, okay, where are we? We haven't heard a thing. And I'd like it to come from you with,
Sure.
copy it to me,
That's-
would you please?
Yeah, that's not a problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
Got it.
we've got the water and sewer updates.
Is there a specific project you
Nope.
want to talk about, or you want me just to go through all of them?
No,
No.
not really. If there's,
That was very unanimous.
No, I just,
if there's something you think we should highlight,
right, sewer.
I mean, I don't
Same
think there is. I
stuff.
don't know if you want to see anything about Henry.
yeah, you don't have to tell, you don't
Yeah,
have
I
to,
talked
yeah,
about
okay.
that.
Two things I would highlight. Wastewater plant is out to bid now,
Oh,
and we expect to open those bids in June, mid-June.
Mid-June on 15th, I
And
think.
our expectation is that would be available for the board to award at your July meeting.
If.
So, yeah, so
If,
see what we get. And so that's where we are with that piece. Water plant, Michelle referenced that is, we're still in the midst of our commissioning, but it is in production, correct?
Yeah, we're in the second phase of of commissioning, so in the second part of it, we are in production, so we're producing water right now. Hopefully it's tasting good. And
Why are
then
they digging again out there?
where, they're building up the
Oh, I'm sorry,
bioretention
I'm sorry.
at the,
Wrong, forget it.
okay.
Wrong plant.
sorry, I skipped 3 items.
So that plan is in production now. Commissioning will be done. We're in the second phase of that.
We're in the
That'll be done
second
soon.
30-day phase, yeah. And
Yeah.
then, we're gonna be planning the grand opening, celebration fairly soon.
We're looking at
Early
June
June.
12th, I think, to do that.
You got any slab crappies out there?
So,
Tilapia?
Crappy.
I've always wanted to use a jet ski on the reservoir. That's my dream. So,
Transportation, stormwater, and parks capital projects?
That is actually a duplicate item from
you already
number
covered it.
16.
Yeah.
Okey dokey then. Other business? We've run over by 3 minutes
all
at
right,
least.
I move for adjournment.
Okay,
Second. Thank you.
we are adjourned.
Thank you. Thanks. Good job.